Welcome back, everyone. Today I thought I would try something a little bit different. Yesterday on Twitter, Ari Nie, hope I said that right, put up a really cool thread on color pie breaks and bends. And I thought it would be cool to just read through that, kind of just see what discussion's going on around how the color pie should operate, especially in like eternal formats versus newer formats. So yeah, we'll start by reading what Ari posted, and we'll kind of go from there. So color pie violations, a thread. So he starts by saying, talking with players about white and the color pie has taught me a lot. I understand better which aspects of it are potentially confusing. In particular, the color pie is continuously evolving. This means that a card that was safely in color pie one year may be considered a bend or break the next, or vice versa. And this leads to three kind of color pie violations: dinosaurs, experiments, and planar chaos. Dinosaurs are cards that used to be in the color pie, but are now breaks because the effect has moved on to another color. And here's a couple examples. We got Prodigal Sorcerer, got shifted from blue to red with things like Prodigal Pyromancer. And we've got a card like Keldon Warlord, power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. That effect has moved on to white, and we've definitely seen it in green in the past as well. So there's a few examples of a few dinosaurs, things that used to be in one color, got moved to another color. So the second type of violation we have are experiments, and this is where R&D tried something out and then decided, nope, it doesn't belong there. Here's a pretty prominent one that we've probably all seen at least once, and that's Beast Within. Destroy target permanent, its controller gets a 3/3 beast creature token. Yeah, Beast Within pretty strong, pretty good. Destroying any permanent is very good removal. And that effect has been shifted to white. Obviously, white-black gets some of that too, but generally for like destroy any permanent, you're probably going to be in white or some multicolor version of white. Here's another example: Faithless Looting and Cathartic Reunion. Cool cards, but have definitely caused problems in like Modern, for example. Also probably Legacy. I haven't followed a ton of Legacy, but I'm sure both of these are very good in Legacy Reanimator. Anyway, Ari goes on to say, the line between these is a bit blurry. If an experiment goes on too long, it becomes a dinosaur. We still create failed experiments nowadays, but they're less frequent due to improved process and communication. If we make a change, it's pretty deliberate. Anyway, he goes on to say, Planar Chaos was an alternate present set that imagined the color pie as it might have been. It also shifted several famous cards into different colors. A few of those changes were made permanent. So we have Skulking Ghost, which is essentially the illusion effect, got shifted over to Gossamer Phantasm, and now most illusions have this whenever it becomes the target of spell or ability, Sacrifice It effect, and it's kind of cool. It's very flavorful, I think, for illusions to have that, so definitely like that. And then we see something like Elvish Spirit Guide, which is remove the card from your hand to get a green mana into your mana pool, and that got shifted to Simian Spirit Guide, and now red gets more of these I want mana right now at the cost of a card type of ritual effects. So yeah, that's pretty cool, and we've definitely seen a lot of that with, like Seething Song is a little bit older. Pyretic Ritual, Mana Geyser, also an older one, but, at some point they decided to shift that effect to red, and, I think it fits well in red. And then he talks about a few that were shifted but didn't stay. So they added the tap target creature ability to black, didn't care for that. Obviously a white effect, and occasionally a blue effect. We got Sarah Sphinx, which is the color-shifted Sarah Angel, and Vigilance didn't really stick around in blue, and for good reason, I think. Sunlance is a cool card. Oh, I so wish it was an instant. If it was an instant, I'd probably run this in a mono white deck if it was an instant. Maybe I should just run it anyway, because it still kills like a lot of important things, but a lot of value creatures can get shot down with Sunlance, but cool little card. And then we see Gaia's Anthem, which, yeah, obviously another white effect right here. Creatures you control get +1/+1. In green, why give your creatures +1/+1 when you can give them, like, +X off of your Crater Hoof or your Pathbreaker Ibex or, whatever else. 1/1 seems like trash by comparison. Continuing on the thread, he says, in Limited and Standard, all of this matters very little. The only cards players see are the ones we've printed recently, meaning the color pie is more or less in present state. However, in formats that include older cards, color pie violations can stick around forever, and that muddles the message. When cards like Harmonize and Beast Within are played in tons of green commander decks, players get the impression that green can do absolutely anything. And the reason they get that impression is because green can do absolutely anything. I'll try not to make this a green hate video. We see Harmonize, unconditional draw 3 cards, and we see Beast Within, unconditional permanent removal, turn it into a 3/3 beast. Both very good and very heavily played cards. And the point he makes is a great one. If they experiment with one of these cards one time, it's just in Commander forever now, and there isn't much you can do about it. So any mistakes you make, you have to live with. And, very few cards ever get banned from Commander, so, they stick there. So he poses the question, I don't know of a good solution to this problem. Do you? And this is where I want to spend a lot of the time kind of talking about the discussion around this. So we have this first response right here, which says, what upsets me the most is seeing that white has many nice things still in the color pie, but are things that for some reason haven't been done in a while. And at the same time, other colors are getting new and fun stuff set after set, some even taking things originally in white. And then he goes on to link the Mechanical Color Pie 2017 article, which is something that I've looked at a lot. Here, I'll click on this real quick. I'll just show you guys this. I'm not going to go through it extensively because it's pretty big, but you guys should go check this out. I'll link to this because it's actually pretty cool to look through. So it talks about primary, secondary, and tertiary abilities, and like here's white, for example. Here's the primary abilities. You'll see Banisher Priest, Destroy All Creatures, stuff like that, etc., etc. Anyway, it goes through color by color, primary, secondary, and tertiary, and it's pretty cool. And then there's a few other ways that it's broken down too. So I'll link to that. You guys should definitely check that out. Pretty cool. But the point that he's getting at is that, reanimation is a thing in white and doesn't show up all that often. It'd be nice if it showed up a little bit more often. I've talked about it in another video. Extra combats are tertiary in white, and tertiary abilities aren't supposed to show up that much, but being that there are literally 0 extra combat spells in mono white, excluding Waves of Aggression, after 26 years, I think it's honestly time. Yeah, you shouldn't do it all the time, but once every 26 years on a tertiary ability seems fine to me. So yeah, I definitely agree with their point. White does have some cool things that are already in its color pie, but they don't utilize them enough. And I think too often they revert back to the kind of white weenie strategy, which is great for standard, but is not highly impactful for Eternal formats. And then we see kind of a hardline answer that I firmly disagree with, but we'll talk about it anyway. So this person goes on to say, first, stop reprinting color breaks, and second, can you restrict them or ban all color breaks from every format? So the banning from every format? No, that's not going to happen. There's way too many color pie bends and breaks to ban that many cards from Commander. If you just search color pie breaks for EDH, people have made lists of them, and you're talking about 30 to 50 cards per color. So logistically and intuitively, that's just not going to work. You're going to have a ban list that's 1,000 cards long. As far as can they stop reprinting them? So I thought about this deeply yesterday as I was kind of responding to some of these things on my own on Twitter yesterday. And stopping the reprint of them does nothing. Time Twister is a card that hasn't been printed in 25 years or something like that. And I still see them in my local, legit ones. Not reprinting the card doesn't make it go away from EDH. The problem still exists. It lives there. The person that wants to have a high-powered deck and wants all of their cards to be best in slot will still go out of their way to get that card, even if it's Time Twister. Yeah, I get it. The number of people that can get that card are limited because it's so expensive, but going back to the Harmonize and Beast Within example, given the number of Harmonize and Beast Withins that have ever been printed, I don't think those cards ever really get above $10, if they just stop reprinting them entirely. I just don't see that happening. So all it does is make the cards more expensive, and for those two in particular, probably not expensive enough to stop people from getting them. So it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't make the best color any worse. It doesn't make white any better. What have you solved? Nothing. And there were a number of other people that said stop reprinting the color pie breaks, but it's if it's a card that people want and they're going to use a lot, it doesn't solve the problem. Mono Whiteboarder is a user that I follow on Twitter, and they post interesting mono white cards every single day. They come up with some really weird and interesting cards, so you should definitely check them out if you're interested in learning about just white cards that you probably didn't know about because they're probably older and kind of janky. But their second thing here is they say, I feel like another experimental set like Planar Chaos may be useful. And I've been saying that for a long time too, is that I'd like to see another Time Spiral block where things are weird, they're complicated, you've got these weird color pie breaks, you've got future shifted stuff. I think right now everything's the designs now are so spoon-fed and enclosed within the set. Everything's very linear, and they give you the answer right in front. Time Spiral is not like that. Time Spiral was an incredibly confusing set, and you didn't know what to do with the cards when they came out, and maybe years later, now with Commander being a thing and weird commanders that come out, some of these cards find a home because they weren't like immediately useful back then due to like weird drawbacks or weird abilities. Anyway, yeah, I'd like to see like another Time Spiral block, and especially the middle set, Planar Chaos, with a lot of color shifting. I think that would be a really cool experiment. There's definitely a lot of ways that you can help White within that framework of the color shifting game. So we have another user right here that says, accept that it happened and don't try to change the past. Try to create multiple decent or more efficient variations within the correct as you see it now pie. Sprinkle them around the formats. Stop letting egregious breaks get to print. Pie police? And that's very similar to the response that I gave yesterday. Yes, you can't change the past. Sylvan Library has like nothing in green at all. Like nothing about that card is green, but you can't change it. Maybe you could ban it, but it's not going to happen. Nor would it even solve that many problems. And so we'll go on to what I actually wrote and what I think needs to happen. The bends and break exist in EDH. You can't remove them, and you know there will be more, which is a big point. My solution is relax the rules around them for areas that need it, for eternal formats, but stay strict for newer formats. Bend in a way that fits the color and the flavor. See Smothering Tithe. Is a perfect example of a white card that ramps, does so in a way that makes sense for white. Is maybe a little bit too strong, because like if you mana vault it into play on turn 2 is like absolutely crazy, but you know, that's beside the point. Anyway, it helps the ramping issue in white. Then I go on to say, the hardline stance of it doesn't do that, in quotes, has hurt white more than any other color, I think. Green interacts on the stack now with both of the Veil cards, Autumn's Veil and Summer's Veil. Black has enchantment removal. What's it? Farika's Libation, I think is the card. So good white card draw once in a while isn't going to break EDH. But I would keep these effects out of Standard. So, you know, I think Standard, maybe Pioneer, some of the newer formats, is a place to really police the color pie and keep it the way you want it. But going back to the earlier examples of like Harmonize and Beast Within, giving white a Harmonize is not going to break white in EDH. It's literally just going to say, oh, white doesn't have to have an empty hand all game. They can look at a couple extra cards without, you know, just being stuck and being empty. But yeah, the main idea is I think they just need to accept that it's going to happen and know that there will be more bends and breaks. But if you relax the rules just a little bit, you can definitely solve some of the problems. Like I've said, a white Harmonize, not going to cause any problems. And then looking at the hardline stance that they've had on white, that's probably hurt white more than any other single thing like imaginable. The fact that it doesn't do that. Meanwhile, like Harmonize in green one time. They print Beast Within in green one time. And I'll try to get off of green examples for a little while too. Farika's Libation. It's enchantment removal in black. Black has historically not had enchantment removal. And that's a really big deal. If you wanted to remove enchantments in black, you needed colorless cards to do it. These things need to happen one time, and then they're just there in Commander forever. So to me, the thing that seems painful is that, like, it feels like white has been policed harder on the it doesn't do that than any other color, because there are some genuinely weird effects in green. Even red. Red's got some stuff going back a ways that, like, red probably shouldn't do that. Like, something that's coming to mind off the top of my head is Red Elemental Blast. Obviously a great card, and you'd be sad if it went away. But yeah, I think that hardline stance of it doesn't do that has hurt white more than it's hurt any other color. White seems to innovate the least out of all the colors. They definitely try new things within the context of other colors pretty regularly, it seems, and yet they just don't at all in white. It seems like every set there's a white card that, like, gives your creatures +1/+1, which is fine, but there's so many of those now that, like, you just don't need any more of them for eternal formats. I get why they continue to exist in Standard, but it's like, enough already. Meanwhile, green is like all manner of ramp, card draw, removal attached to a creature. You know, when you think about like all the ETB creatures that destroy stuff on the way in is a little bit problematic. And, you know, white just hasn't had that level of innovation. So yeah, I think they need to relax the stance on, you know, what is a bend and a break. Because again, a little bit of card draw in white is not going to break EDH. And trying to get away from green for a second, so I know I rag on green a lot, but when you compare white to a multicolor deck, last year there were a lot of multicolor commanders that came out. White gets trounced by a lot of the multicolor commanders because in multicolor, there's so many different ways to generate value. And like the discrepancy between like mono white and a good multicolor deck is pretty far because there's so many ways to generate value. And it's sort of like asking this question of, do you want mono white to just be way less good than some random multicolor deck? And, you know, I think it should be a little bit less good, but it shouldn't be like massively less good. You know, obviously there should be some weakness because it's a monocolor deck. There should be some payoffs for being a monocolor deck. You know, the big one's always been Gauntlet of Power. Having a couple things in white that would be a payoff for being monocolor, I think would also be pretty cool. But yeah, right now the discrepancy between the average mono white deck and the average multicolor deck is very large because that multicolor deck can cover all of its weaknesses with its various colors. And the white deck really doesn't have a way to do that. So right now, yeah, you have a discrepancy between white and the best mono colors, green and black. Sorry, blue players. And then you have a discrepancy between white and like every multicolor deck ever. So, you know, they need to fix that. And the way you do it is just relax the rules a little bit. And then as I started to get more emotional on this issue, because that'll happen the longer that I look at this stuff, I'll go from like my logical response to my emotional response. So my second solution is print Spellbook Planar Chaos white. Take the 10 most powerful color pie breaks in EDH, print them as white cards in a spellbook, and here's my suggestions. So take the following cards and print them as white cards: Sylvan Library, Harmonize, High Tide, Reality Shift, Finale of Devastation, Entreat the Dead, and Narset Parter of Veils. All the biggest offenders brought to the color that needs it most. Oh, I know that's so not going to happen. You might get like one of those at a time, but definitely not all 7 or 8 or from however many I put there. But these cards would solve all of the problems that white has. Here's your card draws: Sylvan Library, Harmonize. High Tide is mana ramp that white badly needs. Right now, white is lacking explosive ramp. You look at a card like High Tide, you look at Turnabout in blue. Black has like a ton of mana doublers. Green we don't need to talk about. Red also has a lot of the mana geyser type stuff, Seething Song, those type of cards. So red has the ability to generate explosive mana. White does not have the ability to generate explosive mana. Yes, you have the Knight of the White Orchid, Gift of Estates type stuff, but as good as it is, I don't think it's good enough. Some sort of like white High Tide, white mana geyser, I think would be a much needed thing in white. So Reality Shift, I'm a little salty about the fact that blue has like more good cheap removal than white now, in my opinion. You have 3 of these options versus 2 of whites. Finale of Devastation is a card that does way too much. What? How is that even a thing? Entreat the Dead is the Mastery Animation card in black that's like, it's less good than Rise of the Dark Realms, and it has the Miracle mechanic, which means that it should be like white anyway, because Miracle wasn't a mechanic in black, and I get that that's why they did it, but you know, if you made it a white card, it'd be a really sweet white card, and a lot of people would play it. And then Narset Parter of Veils is one that, you know, many people think should be white, myself included. That should not have been a blue card. Anyway, jam all these into a spellbook set, and I'm sure that thing will sell a bajillion copies, and it'll make tons of money, and either make white way too good, or at least make it compete. One or the other, who knows. But it would certainly be cool to get that many new toys in white. I doubt that it's ever going to happen, but one can dream, can't they? Continuing on, we'll see what some other people said. This person says that get rid of the color pie differentials. All colors should have ramp, card draw, and removal. They shouldn't be as efficient as the main color, but they should have access to these effects. And that's actually very similar to what Ari said on his visit on Tolarian Community College, is that there are certain game mechanics that are inherent to the game that shouldn't be restricted because of your color. And card draw was one of the ones that he named, as well as removal. So I definitely agree with that. And that's very similar to the message that Ari has delivered. So I'm hoping he's able to do some things with that as we go forward. We got Tomer. Says, do more experiments in white specifically for good card draw. Yeah, just have an experiment. Maybe it's too good. Maybe it's not good enough. The problem, one of the problems is I think a lot of the white cards they experiment with, they err on the side of caution too much. They play them too safe, and then they aren't good enough. Where, it feels like in some of the other colors, they just like, well, maybe it's too strong, who cares, whatever. It's one set, and it happened, and now it exists in Commander forever. So, as much as I want them to be cautious, because like Smothering Tithe is one of those cards that's like starting to err on the side of, maybe it's a little bit too good. I guess I just don't want them to be overly cautious, which is a thing it feels like they've done a little bit too much. We get a person hating on green right here. We'll read it because, that always warms my heart. The problem with white is weak versus green can do anything is that we're told that green's weakness is relying on creatures and cannot handle them, but we continue to see more efficient fight creatures, which represent a strength of the color and answer to the weakness, and also the card draw card advantage tied to creatures. On the other hand, white gets almost 0 card advantage, and the little that it gets, Mentor of the Meek, is considered a break because white's strength is small creatures and Mentor utilizes it to overcome weakness. So yeah, talking about how green's weaknesses are being diminished as cards get stronger. You look at a card like Gargos, which is green removal on a stick, basically. On top of the fact that like it's an incredibly strong body that can kill you and also cost reduces all the other Hydras. It's a ridiculous card. So there's definitely some merit to what they're saying. We got Shivam says, I feel like this is the eternal challenge of WotC R&D. Yep. That it is. That it is. Lee Sharp suggests, good thread. The only real suggestion I can think of is making it clearer which cards are experiments. Not everyone reads Morrow's columns, and I'm not sure we want it as high heat as putting it on the card, so I'm not sure how to execute that in practice. But it's a cool thought of just being like, all right, this card, letting people know this card was an experiment. You have like the future shifted frames and stuff. And then if it's crazy, then you're like, all right, well, it was an experiment. Don't get used to it is kind of the thing. But yeah, I don't actually know how you'd execute any of that, but it's a cool little idea. Here's another person that says, stop reprinting Harmonize and Beast Within in the Commander precons. Most of my Commander play group are players who are either less than a year into the hobby or haven't played Magic since Mirage and recently came back. And they all buy precons and use them as a base, yes. So, again, if people want Harmonize and Beast Within, they are easy to get and will probably always be fairly easy to get because they've been printed a number of times. I don't know that stopping reprinting them solves the problem. It doesn't make green worse. It doesn't make white better by not reprinting them. It just makes the cards a little bit more expensive. So then we have a person right here saying this is not the solution. The card will not be unprinted, right? So not reprinting it will just lower the supply and raise the price, correct? Maybe putting these in the upcoming supplementary Commander products, Commander Legends, instead of precons would be a solution. Again, once they're there, they're there. This is an interesting suggestion. This person says, it's not that hard for someone to make and update a state of design document that tells players which of these effects are no longer in or are now part of what color. Example, most players think Generous Gift is the experiment and not the new normal. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. It would obviously take a person a lot of like work hours to put something like that together, and it's probably going to be rife with errors and take a lot of time to like keep up to date, but it's a cool idea. This person has a nice little thought. It says, if you can't try new things or move things around, the game becomes stagnant. Players not recognizing when things are dinosaurs or experiment isn't a fault of WotC. I don't know where the fault lies on that per se. I don't really want to get into like the blame game, but they make a great point in that, yes, they should try new things once in a while. If they don't, the game will get stagnant. So, and I think that's where White's problem has been, is I think that they just haven't innovated in White at all. They haven't tried the new things like they probably should have. And while they were doing that for other colors, and other colors got cool new fun toys that do things, and White stuff is it makes tokens and it gives them +1/+1. That's kind of all it does. So now I'm exaggerating there, like Ameria Shepherd is an immensely cool card, but every once in a while you'll get these gems. But when other colors are getting those gems every set, and for White it's every couple sets, then the rate at which they come out is a little bit disappointing. This person goes on to say is that I don't think it's a problem that needs fixing. Commander players need to recognize that their format is an eternal format with all the advantages and disadvantages that come with the territory. Just like in Vintage and Legacy, the colors aren't going to be perfectly balanced. I get where they're going with that, but on the other hand, mono white is really bad compared to every other color combination right now. So like a little something to boost them up would be really nice. I get it. It's never going to be perfectly balanced. Here's a great piece. This person says, the color pie works to balance the game as it was intended for 1v1 20 life. The problem is that EDH is the most popular format right now, and the color pie is very unbalanced for it, with White strength ranging from unplayable to simply boring in a multiplayer game. And he says, I think White could use more experiments, bends, and even some breaks in non-standard supplemental sets to help it get footing on equal grounds to the other colors. And that's largely what I've been saying, is that, try some things in White, don't put them in standard, put them in the supplemental products, Commander and Conspiracy and what have you. It's less of a problem if it breaks something. The only thing you have to worry about is like breaking Legacy, but that seems incredibly unlikely. But yeah, I do like the fact that they're highlighting that the color pie was designed for 1v1 20 life. And when I talked about Reality Shift with Ari somewhere along the way in this past week, Reality Shift and Pongify are unbelievably good removal spells in Commander. In 1v1 20 life, they have a drawback to them. Like the drawback of the 3/3 or the 2/2 is something you need to deal with. Like it's not nothing in a 20 life format, but in Commander, it's basically nothing. It's almost no drawback. So, and yeah, that's what this person was highlighting. The difference between 1v1 20 and Commander is pretty large. So here's a good one. You should be able to ban cards that break the color pie. That's all. Oh, when I was younger, I would say something like that. Maybe 5 years ago when I wasn't as entrenched in Commander as I am right now. Now having experience on my side, a lot of it, that you can't ban the format into fairness. Like, there's just too many cards. The ban list would be way too long. And like, I get that now. And sometimes I'll still talk about it in like my past voice. Like, I am definitely a little bit more pro ban than most people. But I've come to the point and realized that, like, if you were going to ban things, realistically, you wouldn't want to ban more than like 5 cards at a time. If you ban 5 cards right now, like let's just say the 5 most egregious and heinous cards, like that would still be a moderate size change to the format. That would take people some adjustment, and it's just not a route you want to go down. So yeah, you can't ban the format into fairness. You absolutely can't ban all the color pie breaks. And even if you did, white would lose a lot in that exercise. Like, yeah, I know we don't think about it, but I've looked at some of the EDH lists, and white has just as many bends and breaks as a lot of other colors. And that brings me to a question that you can ask with most of these responses. Anytime someone gives a response, you can follow it with this question: what problem is it solving? So, like, even if you ban all the color pie breaks, green's still going to have a ton of ramp and a ton of card draw. That's just what's going to happen. And again, that doesn't help white at all. White's not getting any better for that. So, yeah, I don't think that actually solves anything. So we'll do one more. Kristen had an interesting response in all of this that I think is worth highlighting. She talks about, I think white also needs more redundant effects. Green has a billion ways to tutor creatures, cantrip, and ramp. White is currently very narrow on options and generally only has one-ofs. If you want to stick to the color pie, Stoneforge Mystic is a great example. Relic Seeker is too slow. And she goes on to say that these one-ofs seriously restrict deck building creatively in white because you can't pick a tribal or synergy card to do a basic pillar need, ramp, removal, card draw, recursion. Then you have to sacrifice synergy for good stuff, leading to more homogenization to compete. Yeah, and I agree with that. Like, Sun Titan and Elesh Norn are like the 2 best creatures in white. There's nothing else even close. And the fact is, you just have to run Sun Titan in every single deck that you play in white, and it's one of the few ways in mono white to repeatably generate value and recursion. So, like, you just have to run Sun Titan in every white deck you play. And, like, there are some legitimately cool 6-drops in white, but, like, you can only put so many 6-drops in your white deck. Some cards that I really like are Protector of the Crown and Palisade Giant. Not that you want those for every deck, but they're cool cards, and, like, you just won't ever run those over Sun Titan because you don't have other ways to generate that sort of value. So yeah, I definitely agree. The one-ofs in white are seriously a problem because, and I've talked about this in my other video too, is that you have like the 3 or 4 best cards in white. You've got like Elesh Norn, Sun Titan, True Conviction, White Sun Zenith is a pretty good finisher, and then like everything below that, there's this like huge gap of space between those cards and the next best things. And that's definitely a big problem in white, where green has like 10 cards that all say cast a creature, draw a card, has 10 ways to tutor for a creature, all the card draw, and has many Crater Hoof type cards. There's so much redundancy in the color, and that white is missing that just in the worst way. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap this up there. So what do you guys think about color pie bends and breaks? Should they be more strict? Should they be less strict on them? What solutions do you guys have about what WotC can do to try and solve the problem of bends and breaks showing up in Commander and not really having a way to get rid of them? Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, feel free to comment, like, or subscribe. Thank you for watching.